All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. I'm Rachel Wright. I'm here today to present Boosting Jira Productivity for the Agile Coaching Group. So welcome. Let's get started. So here's our agenda for today. I'd love to start with just some basic introductions, talk a little bit about productivity, and then we'll jump right into my Jira tips and tricks. So not every tip today will apply to everyone, but even if it doesn't apply to you, maybe it'll spark a new idea you haven't thought of before, or at least give you something to talk to your colleagues about. And then afterwards, I'll share some resources to help you on your Jira journey, answer your questions, and share some upcoming event information. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and I will answer them at the end. So first, just a little bit about me. I'm Rachel Wright. I'm a certified Jira administrator and author of the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. And I started using Jira in about 2011. I became an administrator in 2013. And then in 2016, I took the certification. So right now, I'm an independent consultant, and I'm helping organizations set up, clean up, migrate, and maintain Jira, Jira Service Management, and Confluence. So I'm really excited to work with the Agile Coaching Group to help users learn more about Jira and other Atlassian tools. So the Agile Coaching Group helps organizations achieve the highest level of business agility. And they do this with coaching, training, and transformation services. Their coaches and consultants have a ton of experience, over 15 years, and they can help your organization improve business operations and really build happy, healthy, and high-performing teams across your organization. So find a class or get the help you need from them at agilecoachinggroup.com. So next, I'd love to learn a little bit about you. I've got a link here up on the screen, and if you can take the quick and anonymous poll at the URL shown, I'd appreciate it. I will put the URL in the chat, so it's easier to click. There we go. And I'll just give everyone a moment to tell me a little bit about your Jira experience, what kind of Jira you use, and what you find most challenging about Jira. I'm going to jump over to my browser to grab some results. All right, excellent. Thank you so much for that information. So great, we've got some application administrators on. I'm really happy about that. I have some admin tips at the end, and you'll find that a lot of your users will want to use some of these tips, and you might need to do something in Jira to enable that. So excellent, thank you. Welcome Scrum Masters, users, and project level admins. And it looks like most people are intermediate or advanced, which is super. Glad to have you. And a lot of cloud users, and then some multiple like me and unknown. No worries. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for that information. It'll help me kind of tailor what we talk about today. Let me jump back to PowerPoint. All right, so before we get started in Jira, I want to just talk a little bit about what is productivity and why do we use software to be more productive? So confession time, I'm an absolute workaholic. I used to think that productivity meant getting a lot done. And I work really hard. I look up at the clock and then I realize it's been 14 hours since I've stood up and I forgot to eat lunch. So I found a guy online named James Clear, and he's an author and an entrepreneur. And I really like his productivity definition. And James says that productivity is a measure of efficiency of a person completing a task. So we often assume that productivity means getting more things done each day, and of course, that's wrong. Productivity is getting important things done consistently. And James also says no matter what you're working on, there are only a few things that are truly important. And being productive is about maintaining a steady average speed on just a few important things and not maximum speed on everything. So I have a lot to learn and a lot to improve on the way I work on my own productivity. I really only know how to work at maximum speed. So I'm working on improving my own habits as we speak. So, how can software make us more productive? Well, it can help us get organized, stay on track, measure input and output, plan what we work on every day, help us determine what tasks are the most important, and then help us understand how we did on those tasks so we can improve next time. So, Jira is great at all of this. So, I'd love to share you some of my tips and tricks about how Jira helps me be more productive. Okay, so the first thing to know, there are multiple ways to do everything in Jira. Just like in Microsoft Office, I find 10 ways to do the same thing. But not all ways are equal. Some are faster than others. So let's talk first about just finding what you need in Jira with that search feature. One way you can search is using that quick search feature at the top right of every Jira page. And this is really fast and easy if you happen to know the issue's ID. Just enter it in the search box, like in this example screenshot, I've entered HR1. And Jira will show the issue in a drop-down menu, and then it will also link to the HR project as well, because that's part of the ID I entered. If you know a word or a phrase, enter that in the search box. And anything you enter here, Jira is going to search for that word or phrase in its summary, its description, or in any comment fields. So that's definitely the fastest way to search. But here's a quick trick. If you know that issue ID, you can also just append it to your browser's address bar. I find that so much faster. Sometimes I just bookmark my Jira URL/browse, and then I have it ready to go to just enter the ID of the issue I already know I'm looking for. So another method to find what you're looking for in Jira is to use the regular search feature. And you can access it by clicking the filters link on the main nav and choose. There is actually two methods here. And we'll start by talking about basic. So basic within advanced. It's more advanced than the top right quick search feature. All right, so search and JQL. So anytime we search Jira, we're just really asking Jira a question. You're querying the database for issues that match your specifications. So that big scary acronym JQL, in Jira, it means Jira Query Language. And it's the way to search through thousands of issues to find just what you're looking for. And you can also use it to control which issues appear on your board and what data is displayed in your dashboards and reports. Now, don't let JQL scare you. Most of you all are intermediate and advanced, so you probably got it down. But if you haven't used it, it's for everyone. It's not just for technical users. Here you can kind of see the difference. On the left is the basic search, where we're going to use drop-down menus to narrow down results. And then on the right is an example of an advanced search, and that's where all the power is. So if you want to know more about JQL and see some sample queries, go to that link at the bottom right of the screen. Sometimes I forget the syntax myself, and I use that link to just remind myself of the format of a query I want to use or I use often. So you probably already know this, but the easiest way to learn JQL is to convert between basic and advanced. So just in case you haven't done that before, I'll show you in a browser real quick. This is the basic mode, and I've told Jira with these drop-down menus how to limit my search. I've said only show me issues in this one project, show me issues just that are tasks in that project of any status that are assigned to the current user, which is me. So that's basic search, and you can quickly convert to advanced search by clicking this switch to JQL, or in Jira Server, it's just called advanced. Click that button, and you can see that it converted your basic search into JQL, Jira Query Language. That's a really easy way to learn how it works. And the thing I really like about this feature is that you really can't go wrong. You see that there's a green check mark on the left, and it kind of helps you along with your syntax. If it turns red, you know something's wrong with your syntax, and it will also suggest values you can use in this search. So this is where all the power is, and if you're not using this tip, this is worth your time to learn. All right, jump back. Okay, so here's my next tip now that we've talked about searches and how to save a search. We'll do that in a second, but this is really easy and powerful. I like to use a filter subscription just to remind me of tasks that are almost due so I don't forget something. So first, create an issue in Jira for the future, assign it to yourself, and set a due date. And then create a filter to find all the issues due in however many days you care about. Save that filter, and finally create what's called a filter subscription, which is going to send you an email when a due date is approaching. And this works really well for recurring tasks or quarterly maintenance items I don't want to forget to do. And here's a practical example. If you're a Jira administrator, if you need to make users inactive on their last deployment day, and if your system doesn't do that for you, I'll create a Jira issue. I'll put the person's name in the issue and I'll give the due date of their last day. And then I'll be reminded, hey, go deactivate this user at the end of the day. So you can create a subscription from the details page of any saved filter. So I'm going to grab the URL I created for this little demo and just show you really quick how this works if you've never done it. Okay, so I have created a filter. I've called it due soon. And I've said, show me all the issues assigned to me that are due between now and 6 days from now and that aren't already closed. So I found one issue called train the intern. I can also change this to say 6 weeks if I want to be even more proactive. And now I see, oh, I've got 2 issues due. I better remind myself to do those. So you can save any filter to use it later by clicking the save button. And then from here, once it's saved, you can click details and then new subscription. And essentially I'm creating a email digest for myself. I'm going to say every day that I have issues due, I want to remind myself. So you can set these any way you like. Maybe you only want to be reminded on Mondays and maybe probably not at 4 a.m. That's a little much. So you can set the subscription any way you like. And at the very bottom, there's a checkbox that I like that says email this filter even if no issues are found. So it's up to you if you want to check this or uncheck this. Sometimes it's useful for me to know that Jira did make the check and nothing's due and I'm okay to go. And other times I don't want an email I only want an email when there's something to act on. So you can click subscribe and then Jira will email you on that cadence that you asked for. So that's super easy, super helpful. You can do this for your whole team. You can do it just for your personal reminders. Think about different ways that you can use this to make your life easier. Okay, this is my absolute favorite tip. I super love this, and I hope you all set this up after this webinar. So if you're still using Jira to search Jira, that's really 2020. There's a much faster way, and I'm excited to show you about it. So instead of searching Jira in Jira, you can use your browser search engines feature to quickly jump to a Jira project or a specific issue or other admin pages that you use frequently. And there's no navigation or clicks required. And I love this tip because it just saves me time. I use this most often. And once it's set up, you never have to touch it again. You just simply type a specific set of characters to jump straight to your favorite Jira locations. All right, so let me show you how it works. And we're going to try to break the internet by playing a YouTube video within a PowerPoint on Zoom. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I've got 2 shortcuts for this demo. I'm going to type P, then tab demo to go to the demo project. And it goes straight there. My second example, I'm going to type I and then tab demo-1, and I'll go straight to that issue ID. Super quick. So right click on the address bar to manage these settings. And there's the page where you do that. And here's a simple example of what the setup looks like. Okay, so one thing I like to do quite often is I use this to search the dictionary. So I type D, tab, and then whatever word I'm trying to look up, and it'll search dictionary.com because that's what I've set it up to do. So you can do this in other browsers like Firefox. There are other browser extensions you can use to achieve the same thing. And at the bottom of the slide, I've got a link that shows you exactly how to set this up. It's super quick. I really hope you use this tip. I love it. Okay, so that was pretty fun. Again, it was my favorite, but here's a lower tech way to do what I was trying to accomplish. So if you don't want to set up search engines, that's cool. But what you can do is create bookmarks in your browser's bookmark bar to take you straight to a specific Jira project or issue or a page. And this is a little less fun because it's a static link, but it still saves me a lot of time and I still do it. So think about the areas in Jira that you visit most and put a direct link to them on your browser's bookmark bar. So in my role as an end user, the three things I do most often are visit my to-do list dashboard, search for issues, and then of course to check the status of issues I created for other teams, like where's my HR request or my IT help desk issue. So here are the links to all of those areas. Again, that's what I do most often. Use what you do most often. But also notice that the link format differs a bit between Jira Server, Jira Data Center, and Jira Cloud. So the formats of the links differ between the deployment methods. The UI differs slightly. They have different features, and there's even different terminology. So at the end, if you're not sure which one you have, I'll show you how to figure it out. And then here's some links for the admins on the call. These are the things I do most often in the Jira admin console. I'm always going to the issue page and I'm always going to the user management area. So think about a useful bookmark you use, something you visit every day, and then drag that into your browser. So that's pretty simple. Say I want to bookmark this URL. I'm just going to drag it into my address bar like this. I'm going to show you one tip real quick. And that's that some areas of Jira are dynamic. So let me show you an example. I'm going to go to the dashboards page in Jira. So notice this URL is secure/dashboard. And in some areas of Jira, it remembers what you viewed last. And dashboards are one of those examples. So I don't want to bookmark this URL because this is what I've looked at last. I want to look at a specific dashboard every morning when I come into work. So the way to get the specific URL is to go to dashboards, go to view all dashboards, and then click on the one that you like. And now you can see that my URL has added a parameter at the end. This is dashboard 10,003. And that's the link you want to bookmark, unless you really want to bookmark whatever dashboard you looked at last. But for me, there's usually a specific dashboard or two that I like, and that's how to find the ID. Okay. My next tip is a simple one, keyboard shortcuts. They're so helpful. Anyone can use these, both end users and admins, and they just make common tasks easier. So there's lots of different kinds of shortcuts. There's global ones that apply everywhere, navigation ones to help you get where you want to go, issue actions, and board shortcuts. You've probably been typing and you accidentally typed a shortcut C and it kept trying to create an issue. It's probably because you inadvertently typed one of these shortcuts. But as I mentioned, my favorite one is C because it's an easy way to create an issue with no clicks. And then use the dash key to access quick search. So that's another quick way to find what you're looking for. All right, my next tip is to optimize your profile settings. And this is one area of Jira that differs a lot between server and data center. We'll group those together for today's purposes, and cloud. So this is the screenshot for server. Cloud looks totally different, so don't be surprised if you don't recognize this. But there's a bunch of personal settings in all deployment types of Jira that you can customize. So just click on your user avatar and select settings to access them. If you're a cloud user, you're actually going to have two settings locations under your profile avatar. Kind of like in Google, where you can use the same credentials to log into, say, your Gmail or your Google Drive or YouTube. Atlassian is the same. You have one Atlassian account and you use it to log into all the different applications like Jira Service Management, Confluence, Jira. So for you guys in cloud, you have two sets of settings, your personal account settings with Atlassian and then your personal Jira settings. So just be aware of that slight difference. Okay, so in general, the concepts are the same regardless of what your screen looks like. Things I like to change are the email type field. I like to use HTML instead of text. And the reason is text format shows you that there is a change, but HTML format shows you exactly what changed. So definitely switch to HTML if your default is text. Try it out, see if you like it. I think it's much better. Next is the My Changes. So do you need Jira to email you about changes that you make? Probably not. We all get enough Jira spam as it is, right? So in the preferences section, change the My Changes field from notify me to don't notify me. You can always change it back if you change your mind. And for Jira administrators, this is configurable. So you can set this to what you would like new users to have when they log in for the first time. And then they can change it if they don't like your default selection. And then last is that auto watch field. I like to enable it. And when you do that, you're automatically added as a watcher on issues you create or comment on. So if you like that, enable it. If you don't like it, turn it off. And for Jira administrators, you can change these default preferences at admin system default user preferences. That's the path. All right, next, let's talk a little bit about custom views, because there's so many ways to view data in Jira, and you should really use the one that gets you the information you need fastest. So this is just the filter results view, and it's best when you just need a quick list of issues, but you don't have to settle for the default view. You can do lots of things here. You can reorder the columns, you can show and hide columns, you can sort by column data, and then you can continue to refine your search until you find the results you need. I'm just going to go to just a generic search I pre-prepared, order by created descending. Not so interesting. But so I can drag these columns around to look at them in the order that makes the most sense to me. I have to fix that immediately because it doesn't make any sense to me to have the summary before the key, but that's just my personal preference. So drag and drop those any way you want, click on them to order them ascending or descending, and you'll notice that the query at the top changes as you make these changes. So that's another hint about how to use the JQL syntax. And then finally, in columns, you can show and hide any standard or custom field in Jira. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I want to see the resolution column. And of course, resolution applies to issues that are waiting to be resolved or complete. And that's how you show and hide columns. One thing to note, when you're exporting issues, at the top right, there's this export button. You can choose to export every field in all of Jira, or you can choose just to export the data in the current fields. And I like to use current fields because I can control what data I care to export. I don't export everything that might not even apply to the data that I'm looking at. So keep that in mind. When you export, current fields is whatever you're currently looking at, and that's configurable. Okay, so more on custom views. There's obviously built-in reports for every Jira project. You can find them by clicking the reports link in the project's left nav. One thing I like to do with these reports is run them and then grab the URL that's generated and bookmark it. There's no way to share a report in Jira, so the best way is to just grab that unique URL after you've run the report and then tell your buddies about it. All right, I don't find the reports super helpful, to be honest. What I find more helpful are boards, and then even more helpful than that, dashboards. So let's talk really briefly just about these views. If your major focus of what you care about is status, then a board is probably your most helpful view, because the board's divided into columns, which are mapped to the different statuses. So here are some tips for keeping your boards fast loading and useful, because the more data that's on the board, the slower it is. So first, only show the most important information on your card. So let me go back real quick. Each one of these square boxes is called a card. And right now I'm just showing the default, which is the the issue icon, the issue key, the priority, and the summary and the assignee. But you can also show up to 3 additional pieces of information on each card. But keep in mind that's going to make, it's going to take up more room in your display. So just show the most important fields. I like to add due date as one of my 3 additional possible fields, and then I just leave it at that. But it's up to you, to your board. Next, limit the number of columns. So these are the vertical columns, and in the screenshot, I've got 3 to do, in progress, and done. So if you've got, and then finally, limit the number of issues. If you've got I'm sure you've experienced this. If you've got a lot of issues, it's going to make your board slower than it needs to be. So here are some ways to limit your issue count on your board. First, limit the scope of the query that powers the board. And again, a query is just a saved filter, some JQL we wrote to say what should show on the board. So limit what that query is returning to only show what's important right now. So as a quick example, instead of showing all the issues in your Jira project, exclude all the ones in closed or done status. You probably don't need to look at those every day, right? So just remove those and remove that whole column, and your board will be much easier to use. And then next, think about using multiple small boards instead of one gigantic board. So you can have as many boards in Jira as you want. There's no limit. So for example, create a board that has all your backlog issues, and then on your daily board, remove those backlog issues. So the backlog gets its own separate board, and that's an easy way to deal with it. You could also limit your scope by date, kind of what we did earlier. We wrote a small little query that said, show me everything due in the next 6 days or 6 weeks. You could use your query like that and then have a board just for stuff due soon. All right, a couple board tips to make it easier to use and quicker to find what you're looking for. First, use quick filters, and that's what I'm pointing to in the screenshot. There's 2 that come by default, only my issues and recently updated, but you can customize these any way you like. You do not have to use the defaults. So this lets you segment the issue list. So everything that shows below, and those 2 are the default, but you can add like only issues for users on my team, or only issues due tomorrow, or only issues that are bugs. You can go crazy with how many, like a sub filter. You have one filter that's determining what can show on the board, period. And then you have these quick filters that give you the ability to segment that data. So definitely use these. Another thing I like are the swim lanes. So I'm pointing to one now. The first one that you see is expedite. And this groups issues horizontally in rows. So the default swim lanes are priority based. So for example, in this screenshot, in the middle, there's a horizontal lane for the high priority issues, and then there's one below just for everything else. So you can add your own quick filters and swim lanes using any JQL query. I've seen companies use this as one swim lane, again, which is the horizontal grouping that you see. They use one swim lane for each team member. They use one swim lane for each component. They do sometimes date-based ones, like Q1 issues, although think about it, if you've got all quarters on a board, that's probably too big of a board. But you got the idea, right? You can break up this data any way you want and then only see what's important to you. All right, so the last custom view and the way to view your data is my favorite. It's probably because I'm old school and I was using Jira before boards were even a thing. So for me, my favorite view is the dashboard view. And this is the best for when you're focused on statistics or data beyond current status. So again, boards are great for status. Dashboards are better for statistics. All right, so just a few dashboard tips to share. Just like boards, you want to limit the number of issues that are returned. Now, dashboards can handle more data, so it's a little more forgiving, but you do want it to load as fast as possible, and you don't want to look at junk you don't care about. So think about what the purpose of each dashboard is you create, and only show a limited amount of data, and then create another dashboard if you have other data. Break up those boards if needed. One thing I like to do, I like to give each team or department their own shared dashboard, just reviewing overall statistics. So that's something that you bring up at the beginning of the meeting and talk about how are things going on overall. And then later, you should have other boards or dashboards that focus on specific areas or teams or problems. And then finally, I create at least one custom dashboard just for my personal to-do list. So I would definitely recommend you create one and then you save it in your browser bar like we did earlier, so you can launch it first thing every day. I check mine multiple times, and so for me, it's really easy to spot new issues when they come up. And I really prefer checking my personal dashboard to relying on those Jira email notifications. I'll tell you, we all get so much email already. This is one way to kind of cut down and make sure you're being a little more proactive by just looking at your custom dashboard every so often. Okay, next area is time tracking. So some of you are groaning, I'm sure. You're probably thinking, what does time tracking have to do with productivity? Well, plenty, really. If you're not tracking your time, how do you know how long a task takes? And how do you know if it took longer than it should have? And how do you prepare for that same kind of task next time? So let's say like I'll do a task and it takes me 4 hours. And then my buddy Robert over here, he does that same task, but he can do it in 2 hours. So that's valuable data. And I want to ask Robert, hey, how did you do it faster? So maybe he's got a trick I don't know about. And I definitely want to hear his tips on what I can do. Or maybe there's just a better way to complete the task. Maybe I'm derailing myself, focusing on the wrong things. But I would never know that if I didn't bother to track how long everything takes me. So my recommendation is start slow, make it optional, but do allow people to track time in Jira. You can't improve and just until you have a baseline as a starting point, right? Now be careful with this because to a lot of people, time tracking sounds scary from a job security perspective. So communicate in your organization that time tracking is not about how good you are, how fast you can do something. It's really about understanding how long work takes so the company can plan their resources, right? It's not about you, the individual. It's about the strategic initiatives of the company. It's about planning, prioritization, continuous improving, not how quick you are. So there's lots of ways that you can track time in Jira. You can use Jira's built-in estimate and time logging features. Your administrator just needs to enable this once and it will be on for every Jira project. If you don't like Jira's default capabilities, and there's kind of an example on the right, you can purchase an app or an integration. Some of the consultants I know, they use Harvest to track time and expenses, and Harvest can talk to Jira. So you log it in one place and it gets pushed to the other place. Or you can use a simple browser extension, and I'll show you my favorite. So this is called Simple Time Track. It's free. It's a Chrome browser extension that you can install. And I just start and stop the clock manually for every project I'm working on or for every customer I'm working with. And then I either log it in Jira or I log it in my bookkeeping software. So super simple. It's essentially a stopwatch, but it lets you have multiple stopwatches going at the same time. And then if you're just not going to track time, right? Some organizations are just like, forget it. Our users will never do it. I will never do it. You can at least look at the time between transitions in your workflow. So maybe users aren't tracking how long things take, but maybe they're really good about keeping up with the status of their issues. So they're transitioning them in accordance with reality. Then you can use the time between transitions to see how long something took. So the easiest way is to do this with an app called JSU Automation Suite for Jira Workflows. That's a mouthful, but it's a fantastic app. And it gives you one of these transitions tabs that isn't there already. And you can see how long an issue took in a particular status. For admins out there, one thing I note is sometimes users don't know what the transition buttons do. And I can see in this tab that maybe an issue spent, 1 minute in a certain status, and then it moved to the next status in 1 minute or seconds. I like to look and see how long users take between the transitions to maybe understand who could use a little bit of training about what transition button to click when. So when you see lots of transitions made within the same minute, that's a clue that either your workflow is awful and you need to fix it, or there's just some user training needed. So there's some value in there too. You can also access this information from the REST API or the database if you have access. All right, next productivity trick. I really can't live without this bulk change feature. So Jira lets you manage multiple issues at once with this. And you can do lots of things. You can edit, move, transition, or even delete multiple issues at once, provided that you have the right permissions to do that. So by default, you can bulk change 1 to 1,000 issues across multiple projects. And that 1,000 is configurable by your Jira administrator. But before you go and you make that 1,000,000, keep in mind that that limit is there for a reason. So sometimes I'm doing some maintenance and I really do have a legitimate reason to move more than 1,000 issues at a time. I'll go and I'll up that limit temporarily. I'll do my maintenance and then I'll bring that limit back down to 1,000 because really you don't want to let Jira query forever. You do need to cut that off somewhere, and 1,000 is what Atlassian recommends. So I try to get back to that point. So use cases for bulk change. Maybe your release moved, the date or even the version. So you can fix that in bulk. There's no need to fix every issue individually. Or maybe a team member left the company. The first thing I like to do is I like to bulk reassign any issues of theirs that aren't done. So then I assign them to their supervisor. Lucky. Or if a project is no longer used, then I use the bulk tools to bulk close all those issues as part of a project archival activity, or maybe bulk add a comment, something like that. So lots of ways to use bulk change. And as long as you have permissions in all the issues that are returned in your query, you can change them all at once. And really quick tip for Jira administrators, make sure your admin group has the bulk change permission in every permission scheme. Also, for that matter, I give the Jira admin group every permission in every line item of every permission scheme. And the reason for this is if you're doing a bulk migration of data, or you're trying to do a bulk cleanup on multiple projects with multiple permission schemes are used, you don't want to be tied up trying to figure out where you're missing a permission when you're trying to move 1,000 issues. So do yourself a favor, give the Jira admin team ability to do everything in the permission scheme, and then your bulk moves will be much easier. One more related tip, my personal opinion is that when you create data in Jira, you don't want to delete it. So if an issue is created by mistake, just train your users to close it with a resolution of won't do or invalid or whatever your wording is. I like to turn off the ability to delete issues. Again, it depends on your compliance, your security, your organization, your industry. But for me, it's much safer from an audit perspective to simply close unneeded issues. And in the permission schemes, don't let anybody delete them. Okay, next tip. The best way to increase your productivity is to learn from your peers, right? Everybody has little tips and tricks and hacks they've learned over the years. So here are some places you can go to hear how they've solved problems. You can swap tips at your local Atlassian user group meetings. And I know most of the country is not meeting in person, but local user groups are holding online events right now. So they're not dormant, they're just online. So you can still join. You can join the online Atlassian community if that's more what you prefer. And of course, the annual Summit User Conference. And I can't wait until that's in person again, because it's my favorite event of the year, personally or professionally. Start lobbying your boss to go to the 2022 event and save the money to do it. It's totally worth it. All right, so like I said, you can find a user group near you. If there's not one near you, you can start one at ace.atlassian.com. And just use your Atlassian ID to log into community.atlassian.com. And then, of course, add Summit to your training calendar. I promise you won't regret it. Along the lines of learning from your peers, if you need help or have a question or even want some feedback about how you're planning to implement something, the Atlassian community is filled with experts and helpful thought leaders and users that are there to just help you and answer your questions because they're nice people. So here's one. Fabian is fantastic. So look for the words community champion, or in this screenshot, it says community leader, but in 2021, it says community champion. Look for that flag next to specific users. And these are the people that Atlassian has identified as the most helpful people in the community. So they're going to provide the most helpful content and opinions and answer questions. And keep in mind, In Jira, there's 1,000 ways to solve a problem. So solicit lots of feedback from the community, and somebody has probably experienced and found a solution to whatever you're trying to do. And then also the link at the bottom left, Fabian has made a list of all the helpful people and resources that are out there. So you don't have to go and find these people on your own. He's got a list. So go check out that URL. It's really helpful. All right, my next tip is about managing multiple Atlassian IDs. Now, if you're lucky, you only have one and you can stop there and you can go get some coffee. But for many of us, especially if you're a consultant and you work in many different applications, or maybe you have both server and cloud at your organization, or maybe you help a nonprofit on the weekends and you have another Jira that you have to log into. So if that's you and you have multiple Atlassian IDs, I feel your pain. The easiest way around this is to, in your Chrome browser, create different profiles. So I've got a profile for one company. I've got a profile for one solution partner I work with. I've got a profile for accessing the community. You can have as many profiles as you need, but each profile gets its own set of preferences, bookmarks, and extensions. So with this function, I'm easily able to switch between profiles. They each have their own browser window. And now I don't have to log in and log out of Atlassian resources to change hats. I can be logged in as Rachel, the community member, and also be logged in as, Rachel, the AppFire or ThinkTilt consultant or whatever. So this is really helpful to me. And so it's kind of the only way I can get anything done. Otherwise, I have to log in and log out all the time and I forget who I am. So try this out. Next, project links. So if your team has a Confluence space or a Slack room or another team hangout, why not integrate that with Jira? Ask your project level administrator to add those links using the add item in the left sidebar. So in server, it's add link. In cloud, it's called add item, but it's always in that same place. You can also add a team contact email address using a mail to link in the web address field. So you can do like mail to team@domain.com, like in my screenshot. The idea is to try to make Jira talk to everything you use so you can pick one as a home. I know a lot of people like to use Slack as their home, and this way you can link those things together just with a quick bookmark in the project. All right, component routing. I love components. This is the best part of your Jira project. It's the most powerful feature. And the reason is your component selection list, you can manage it if you're a project level administrator. You don't need an application level administrator to make any changes for you. So you can use this to form a natural issue grouping. And then of course you can query for all issues involved in a certain component. And one thing this field does that no other Jira field can do is automatically assign issues. So that removes manual work and that gets the issue to the person who needs to see it quicker. And of course, you can associate one issue with multiple components. So this is really my favorite setting in a Jira project. So in this screenshot, you can see that I'm the lead for both the process and the project components. And if either of those are selected when an issue is created, the issue will automatically be assigned to me. Now, here's a couple things to note about this feature. So that automatic routing I just mentioned, that only occurs on the create action. So if somebody creates an issue, doesn't select a component, and then selects one later on, no auto assignment is going to occur. So you should know that. You should if you like auto assignment, you should encourage your users to select a component in the beginning. You can put it on your create screen. You can even potentially make it required. Now, there's a hierarchy to how this routing works. It has a lot to do with different assignee types and what happens when multiple components are selected. And it's fascinating. The best article I've ever seen that explains it is this one I've got linked on the left by Mikey Schott from Service Rocket, an Atlassian solution partner. So this is worth a read, especially if you're an administrator trying to figure out why things didn't get assigned the way you expected them to. So have a look at that. But really the point is here, auto assign your stuff. That way they don't have to be manually assigned. All right, next, delegate to project admins when you can. Make sure your end users know when to contact the project admin and when to contact the Jira admin. So that's going to save both people a lot of time and get user questions resolved faster. So how do you know? Some things that the project admin does is if you need an issue closed or a sprint started or a component added, talk to them for that. If you need global things like a new Jira project, an integration, or a change that impacts the application as a whole, that's obviously for the application level admin. And the more you train your users who to contact when, the more time you're going to save. So in each project, there's this description field, and I use it to list the name of a single point of contact. So this way users, even if they don't know who to contact, they know where to look to find the contact. And so I always use this description field, and it's really helpful if like the lead is a generic user. Sometimes you see that. People create accounts, they name them generically, and they make them the project lead. Well, you don't know who that human is. So just use your description field to explain who to contact. All right, I'm going to skip through a couple of these things because we're running out of time. I would love to answer some questions, but I want to get to some of the other more interesting tips. Of both cloud and server and data center. This is an easy way to give your users a way to access other Atlassian and non-Atlassian applications. So ask your Jira administrator to set this up for you and just make one place where users can access all tools. And then, of course, you can connect Jira to other Atlassian tools so you can see lots of data in one place. I like to connect Jira and Confluence to create a reciprocal link between issues and related pages. So ask your admin to set up this connection, but once they do it, it's done. And you can see in this example that I have a Confluence page on the left that is linked to one Jira issue on the right, and I can click on either of them and go to the other app without any trouble. They're inherently linked reciprocally back and forth. All right, I'm going to skip over how to do this because you've probably done it. If not, email me at rwright@jirastrategy.com and I'll be happy to send you the instructions. So you can create, I'll just really quickly, you can create issues from Jira using the insert macro. You can create issues in Confluence by selecting any copy and clicking the Create Issue button. And then you can also highlight a whole table and create issues in Confluence for Jira that way. And this is really useful if you're like writing a list of user stories. You can just create all the Jira issues for all of those user stories in one shot. So I really like that. As I said earlier, you can connect Jira to all sorts of different tools. I love connecting to Slack and making Slack kind of my home base because it's easy to use on a mobile phone or mobile device. So have your Jira admin help you set up integrations with other applications and try to make it easier for your users to move between. Okay, read-only database access. So this is for Jira server or data center users who can write a database query. I always recommend giving read-only database access to your admin team so they can access hard-to-reach information. Now, don't make changes directly in the database. That's a horrible idea. But definitely have read-only access so you can see what's going on in the background. There are a lot of things that you just cannot access through the admin UI. And the second I got database access and was able to poke around, and believe me, I'm no DBA, I was able to understand more about how Jira works in the background and able to find data that is just not there. So for example, let's say you want to find, you have a ton of workflows and you know one of your workflows has a transition that's restricted to a certain group or role. You can write a query like this one and find them. There's no way to find that information in the Jira UI. You would literally have to open every workflow, click on every transition. This is the fast way to do it. So go hound your DBA for read-only access. Admins, my favorite little tip is to type GG on your keyboard and it will bring up this little quick search. It will only search the admin areas. And in this example, I've entered workflow and there's only 3 pages in the admin console that contain workflow. So it shows them for me. A lot of times I forget where the pages live. This way you don't have to know. Just type GG and you can get to the quick search. Okay, real quick, other creation methods. You're not limited to that blue create button at the top in the middle of every screen. You can click that C shortcut we talked about earlier. You can use the clone feature, which copies an existing issue. You can use the create issue button, which is the bottom of a software project's backlog. You can import issues via CSV. You can create issues via email with some caveats. You can create them using third-party apps or create them from other applications like Confluence, like we buzzed through earlier. Also think about ways to extend Jira using apps from the marketplace. One I really like is the ability to create repeating issues, and that means I don't have to do it manually. So I use things like this for maintenance, for any repetitive process, for reminders I set for myself. And this has a really powerful rules engine where you can end creation after so many occurrences, or create issues only on work days, or handle exceptions and variables. This is super helpful if you find yourself creating the same issue more than once. There's other apps like Create on Transition or Update on Transition. I love this. This helps me make reminders or subtasks for other team members. Sometimes I use this for like the definition of done. I'll automatically create that subtask when it's time to close an issue. So the user makes sure that they've done the things they need to do first. This is great for when there's work for other teams. Like, for example, when I'm going to transition an issue from the in progress status to the verify status, automatically create a subtask for QA. So the ideas here are endless, but this is a fantastic app to consider just to make your life a little easier. Another real quick is automated testing. So this is, QA testers will love this tip, and this tip is mostly for Jira admins. So for a very long time, I was manually testing Jira every time we did an upgrade or installed or removed apps or did any routine maintenance or quarterly audit. And it took me about 40 test cases just to make sure Jira was behaving the way Jira is supposed to behave. And I mean, this took hours, right? To run all the tests, document the results. And, a few hours isn't so much until you add up how many times a year that I did this kind of testing. So I was probably spending maybe 80 hours a year just making sure Jira behaves after we make large changes to it. So I started looking to automate that. I wanted an easy tool that has advanced features. I wanted a visual editor because I'm not writing a whole lot of scripts these days. And then I didn't want to be beholden to some specific programming language or framework. And I wanted to be able to use this in multiple environments, so both test and production. And of course, free for commercial use is always welcome. So I found this wonderful tool, Catalan Studio, and those 40 test cases that once took me hours to complete, I ran them in 3 minutes. It was fantastic. So stop verifying Jira functionality manually and go use a tool like this. Your QA department is probably already using some kind of tool. Go see what they're using and see if they can add the Jira application to their other test cases. Okay, I'm going to skip through because I want to have time to answer some questions and share some resources as well. All right, so here are just some quick URLs to help you on your Jira journey. And of course, we talked about you can use the marketplace to extend Jira's capabilities. You can join the online or local user community to help network with your colleagues and get their feedback on whatever problem you're experiencing. And then, of course, put that annual user conference on your calendar. And then there's the Jira roadmap, which will tell you what features are coming next for Jira. So to learn more about strategy, get the Jira Strategy Admin Workbook. My book's different. It's not documentation. It's recommendations from years of cleaning up horrible Jira configurations. So it's about what you should do and what you shouldn't do and why. So I've got a coupon code specifically for you. Use ACG at checkout for 15% off the digital version. And as always, thanks to our partners and thank you for participating. And I appreciated the ability to talk about Jira today. I hope you can take one of these productivity tricks and adapt it into something that will help make your Jira life easier. All right, take care. Be well.